Welcome back, everybody. So we've got another game, 1500 points, Dwarfs versus Bretonnians. Yet again, it seems like I'm facing Bretonnians a lot these days. Met up with the local gaming group, and we decided to do smaller armies than usual, so that we could try and squeeze 2 games in. What I've gone for here is the normal Runesmith General, Thane BSB with the Master Rune of Grugny, an Engineer. I've got 40, or was it actually 38 Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, 20 Iron Breakers, an Organ Gun, and a Stone Thrower and 2 Gyrocopters. So again, going in quite strong. Got the Iron Breakers there, which are a great anvil unit with the 3-up, 5-up parry, and I've got my big horde of great weapon Dwarf Warriors, which is bringing a horde of 40 men in a 1500 point game could be a bit full on, but I was finding it difficult to create 3 blocks of dwarves of a decent size, and so I thought best to just go to 2 and fill out my core section with 1 unit. Haven't gone for the strength 6 infantry. I think that's one of the most powerful things in the dwarf book, actually, the fact that you can have core infantry at strength 6. Obviously the Longbeards and the hammerers in the special section there with the 2 attacks and stubborn. So I haven't gone for Longbeards and hammerers, but I have gone for the Organ Gun with the Rune of Accuracy and the Engineer, which is one of the cheesiest things you can have from the dwarf book, but I thought best to bring something a little bit nasty, just in case I've got to deal with any particularly deadly units that my opponents may bring along. And of course the Gyrocopters are very strong as well. Can be a bit vulnerable to magic, but they're very versatile, and you can just use them as chaff if you're up against high toughness, high armor save things that you wouldn't be able to take out with their steam guns and bombs. The Runesmith is pretty vanilla. He's just got the Rune of Spellbreaking and Rune of Stone. Same with the Engineer. I think he's just got a great weapon. And the Runic Banner is the Master Rune of Grugny with the 4-up ward and 6-inch bubble, giving the 5-up ward against magic missiles and shooting attacks. The Bretonnian forces then, from left to right, for a battle line scenario. I think it's Knights Errant on the far left corner there, 6 of them with lances. You've got a group of peasant bowmen in skirmish formation there with the very cool sort of Robin Hood models. I can't remember what they were called originally, but nicely painted army overall. You can see 1 field trebuchet in the back there too. Next we've got a 2nd field trebuchet. There are 5 mounted yeomen at the front. By herself, in between the yeomen and the Knights of the Realm, is a level 4 prophetess on Heavens. You've got the main unit of Knights of the Realm there, with, I believe it was 2 paladins, 1 the BSB and the other the Army General. You next got another unit of Knights Errant, looks like 9 of them, and a 3rd unit of Knights Errant, smaller unit of 6 or so on the right flank. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of my deployment. This picture here is after turn 1, but I've got the 2 blocks of dwarves in the middle of the board with the Organ Gun in between them and the Master Engineer. The Stone Thrower is behind with 2 Gyrocopters on the flanks. The Bretonnians took the knee to pray, and the dwarves went for turn 1. I moved up the horde and kept the Iron Breakers back to begin with, so that the Organ Gun could get a clear shot off to the mounted yeomen who had vanguarded to the right hand side of the impassable terrain in the middle of the table. They were annihilated by the Organ Gun on turn 1, which left the middle of the board open. I had moved up the warriors ahead, had sort of broken lines with the Iron Breakers there, which was a little bit annoying because there weren't any knights in the middle of the board. It's just the trebuchets and the archers, and all of his knight units were on the flanks. So it would take a little bit of manoeuvring here to see where the combat would happen, and were those knights going to do an about face and come round to the left side of the board to meet my main unit, or were they going to try and flank around the outside? The Iron Breakers were just holding still for the time being to see where the knights would move to and how I was going to react to it. The Gyrocopters pushed up a little bit, but being quite cautious to begin with, because obviously the knights are quick and would be able, if I went too far forward, they would have to flee for no real gain. Flee can be useful sometimes, obviously, if I can pull one of those knight units out of position and then get a charge in, but I wasn't expecting to be able to do that on turn 1, so the gyrocopters were quite cautious. The stone thrower missed, I believe, so it was first blood to the dwarves and a little bit of repositioning. Bretonnian turn 1, the knights errant on the right flank there, or Luke's left flank, reformed out of their lance formation into a flat formation there, worried about the gyrocopter being able to get behind them, get out of their arc rather, and behind the Bretonnian lines. So instead of advancing forward, they just spread out and waited for the gyrocopter to approach. You then had the other lances of knights there, the knights errant and the Knights of the Realm, also back up a bit and reposition, so not advancing forward as I was expecting. You had the Knights Errant, in the red coloured Knights Errant that you can see there, actually back up right to the edge of the board, with the main Knights of the Realm unit pivoting a little bit towards my main unit, but still staying back at the Bretonnian board edge. And the Knights Errant on the other flank did the same, flattened out in order to prevent the gyrocopter getting out of arc and getting behind the Bretonnian lines. The unit of skirmishing archers moved across to get out of line of sight of the organ gun, but were no longer near the prophetess at all, so the prophetess was by herself. She was level 4 on the Law of Heavens and took, if I remember correctly, Ice Shard Blizzard, Harmonic Convergence, the Thunderbolt and the Comet. Now, at the end of Bretonnian turn 1, I got this picture here of the prophetess leading the Bretonnian army, the only model to have actually advanced forward, with the cowardly knights and peasants hanging back at the Bretonnian board edge there. She managed to get off the Comet of Cassandora, and I had to use my Rune of Dispel Breaking. And in this picture you can see 3 dwarves bit the dust from a trebuchet rock, and I was actually quite lucky that none of the trebuchets got a direct hit, which could have been very devastating. Dwarf turn 2 then, the gyrocopters unable to find a very convenient place where they could settle down out of the charge arcs of the Bretonnians. Obviously the Bretonnian knights hanging back at the back of the board on turn 1, not giving the gyrocopters the ability to get behind the Bretonnian line. So they started just to hover in the middle of the board there, waiting for the knights to commit a bit more so they could come in for their bombing runs. The blocks of dwarves moved up, Ironbreakers started to march forward, the dwarf warriors the furthest forward that you can see in the picture there with my general and BSB in the unit. And I probably made quite a big mistake unknowingly with the dwarf warriors moving up a bit out of position there. Perhaps I should have just hung back so that the Ironbreakers could be in line with them. As you can see, the Knights of the Realm on the right hand side of the picture, quite far away. I can't remember how far it was exactly now, but to be honest, I was looking at that unit thinking, yeah, even if they can do a sort of long charge and make it in, I'm fairly confident with a huge horde of dwarves that I could take that charge. And in the shooting phase, I was able to take out one of the trebuchets with my Grudge Thrower, which I was very, very pleased about. Direct hit, wound, d6 wounds. Bretonnian turn 3. So the Knights Errant on the left flank, on my left flank, Bretonnian right flank, made it into combat with the Dwarf Warriors, as did their General's unit, which was only 2 ranks deep there. The Knights of the Realm with the BSB and the Paladin General charging in. The other Knights Errant unit showing the flank to my gyrocopter and moving into position to also join that same combat on the left hand side of the board. And the final Knights Errant unit on the right hand side of the board marched forward through the woods there and lost 2 of their number to the dangerous terrain tests. The young, impetuous knights then turned tail and fled in panic as 2 of them had tripped over rocks and smashed their heads into a tree. Now was probably the pivotal moment of the game as we entered into a crucial magic phase. I can't remember how many dice it was exactly, but I had 6 dispel dice. Luke was able to get off the Ice Shard Blizzard on my Dwarfs, giving them -1 to hit. I had to let that one go because I was saving my dice for the Harmonic Convergence, which I knew could be pretty game-changing if he was able to bubble it up and affect all of his knights in this combat. I saved all my dice for it. Unfortunately, the luck wasn't on my side there, and I wasn't able to dispel it. And so he got the Harmonic Convergence and the Ice Shard Blizzard off, which would give him a big boost in this combat to come. And this did prove to be the turning point of the game, as we were playing with the addition of the Devastating Charge rule for the Bretonnian list, giving them all an extra attack on the charge. As you can see there, my casualties behind the unit, it was very devastating. The Paladin General had the magic item, I don't remember the name of it because I'm not very familiar with the Bretonnian book, but the Red Fury item, the one that gives you extra attacks for each wound you get, and I think the Paladin General killed 8 dwarves single-handedly, and then combined with all the other attacks there, my steadfast was broken by just I think 2 dwarfs or something, and I fluffed my attacks back, and the unit broke and was destroyed. And losing my main unit like that was pretty devastating. Looking back on it, I mean, I don't think I made any huge errors. I did move up the dwarves, obviously giving the option for that charge. However, they did get 2 6s on the charge, and Luke later revealed to me that he did in fact have a banner that would give him an extra d6 or something on the charge anyway. So I don't think I would have been able to avoid that charge. I suppose I underestimated the ability of the hero level general to have a really powerful set of magic items and do loads of wounds on the charge. I thought, well, because it's not a lord, it's just a hero, how bad can he be? What, he's got a few attacks at weapon skill 5 or something. Yeah, just the combination of getting that Harmonic Convergence off and re-rolling all the ones onto hits to wound and all the extra attacks from Devastating Charge and the Red Fury giving him all those extra wounds. It was just too much for the warriors, who obviously only have the heavy armor 5-up save, and I wasn't able to survive that combat. And so that probably was the pivotal moment of the game there. They pursued forward, and with the Knights Errant, and I believe the Knights of the Realm just reformed to face my Ironbreakers. I forgot to mention also that the gyrocopter that was sitting behind the Dwarf Warriors unit got zapped by the Thunderbolt in the same magic phase, so it was a very successful magic phase for the Bretonnians because they managed to destroy the gyrocopter and get the 2 buffs on the Knights units to win that combat. So Dwarf turn 3 then, typical Dwarf fashion, we weren't going to panic and flee despite being now very much against the odds, but the Ironbreakers charged in headfirst to the Knights of the Realm unit to try and avenge their brothers who had met their doom right before their eyes. The gyrocopter, the other surviving gyrocopter, charged into the flank of the Knights Errant unit there, ended up losing the combat and breaking. Rather unfortunately, I don't think I did any wounds, and I don't think the Knights did any wounds to me either. But how come? Right, let me just think now. I lost the combat. I had just a charge for +1, and I think the 2 ranks that they had and the banner, I think I just lost the combat by 2, even though no wounds were caused. So I wasn't able to hold, unfortunately. I think I just was testing on a 7 or 8 and failed it. So I wasn't able to stop those Knights Errant joining the combat on Bretonnians turn 4 and then eventually breaking the Ironbreakers. So all in all, a very enjoyable game. Luke's got a lovely painted Bretonnian army, lots of detail on the Knights. Tactics-wise, what could I have done more? Well, I suppose I could have tried to assassinate the Prophetess early on, perhaps by sacrificing the gyrocopters. I was being a bit cagey with them on the flanks. Perhaps I should have just moved them up the middle of the table once it became clear that his knights were hanging back. I could have just gone straight for the Prophetess, even if it meant the gyrocopters dying from a countercharge or having to flee out of position. I suppose once I'd killed one of his trebuchets, my sort of rationale for advancing forward could have changed. I could have just switched tack and stopped advancing forward. Although, to be honest, it happened more or less on the same turn anyway, because I moved forward and then killed the trebuchet after I'd moved up my Dwarf Warriors. But yeah, it was a good game, a quick game, but lots of action happening in the movement phase, and that's what I love about fantasy is that it's not like your 40k where everything happens on turn one. You've got to do lots of maneuvering and positioning, and then the crucial elements of the game can all turn once people can start to get those charges in. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Got some more games against the Bretonnians coming up, so not the last you'll see of the Bretonnians. And of course, on the same day, I then took my army across to the adjacent table to play against Chris's Dark Elf. So battle report for that coming up soon. Hope you enjoyed it, and take care. Speak to you all later. Bye bye.